Are you finding people just phone you up, say you've got to buy this?
Yeah, they don't ask questions. They're not looking at me, they're looking at themselves.
What 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone who's fresh to the Dubai market?
One of the first things that I think people should look at is their cash flow. The other is try not to get lured into the marketing. Choose a reputable agent, and that might take you asking them very awkward questions, and then go with it.
Rent's good. Is the returns okay in the UK?
Rent is good, but the costs are higher than ever before.
Correction in the market, prices, etc., and also some kind of recession and an oversupply.
The first thing I'd say is that if there's a recession, it will be a global recession. People talk about Dubai to say, oh my God, prices will drop, there will be a crash in Dubai. Well, no, there will be a crash everywhere. London's a clear example. Prices are down around 28 to 30% today in London.
The front end of a developer's office, I think, are, in most cases, they're exceptionally good. Once the sale is done, it goes to the accountants, it goes to the property managers or whatever it is in the back office. And I think they're failing people there.
Yeah. Where do you see the next, say, 10 years in Dubai?
There's a lot of exciting things. If you look at the plans that the government have, it's extraordinary. If you look at all those milestones they're trying to hit, they're probably going to be early as well.
They have a vision for it. They've set themselves expectations. Nobody else is putting it on. They want to do this.
Exactly. Welcome to the Stephen Leckie podcast, and today I am joined yet again by Minesh Pattni, a seasoned investor in the Dubai property market. And we're going to go catch up with him and find out what's been going on in the last 2 years of his time in Dubai. Welcome, Minesh. Thanks very much for coming along.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Nice to see you after a few months it's been, I think.
Yes.
Although we have spoken on the phone reasonably regularly, which is always good. Yeah. So anyway, let's start straight away. You've been investing in the Dubai property market for the last 2 years, and you've been living in Dubai for the last couple of years.
It'll be 2 years in March. Yeah.
What's your take on Dubai as a city after
to live
2 years?
Yeah. I think what I found, my expectations were very different to the reality. Because I think, I don't know if I mentioned it in previous podcasts, but you know what a lot of people do is they watch YouTube, watch social media to work out what's the place like to live in, and you know before you make the big move. I did a lot of that, and I was a bit put off to a certain extent by all the bling and you know that lifestyle, which wasn't necessarily me. Not to say I don't like a little bit of bling, but you know it just wasn't for me. But it was only when I moved here to say, actually, no, you've got something for everyone here. And there's people from all walks of life. So it's been an interesting first year. And I think that the second year, I've sort of become a lot more settled and enjoying it.
Do you think your attitude, you say you've become more settled, so therefore your attitude has changed somewhat to Dubai?
Yeah, in a positive way. I can see, you know, people don't like to say, but there are issues here in terms of living here. There are problems, and you know, as you well know, well documented things like traffic and things like that. But where else in the world where it's becoming popular and people are moving here, are you not going to find that? You know, you find it where back home in London, you know, the traffic's there. They've got all sorts of other problems, but I think what I like seeing here is that they're fixing things as they see them.
And you're an investor. Anything else you're up to in Dubai?
Apart from sitting here in podcasts, not much else. Just looking at properties. I had one of my companies, I sold it in August last year. So I think the lead up to that kept me a little bit busy. But otherwise, no, I'm quite relaxed.
Are you retired?
You could say that, but you're never really retired because you always want to do something. So I'm looking at various projects.
So your property portfolio now is quite extensive. We won't go into details exactly, but How do you see it overall? Are you pleased with everything you've got so far?
Pretty much. I mean, if you know, because what you know when you start and what you know 2 years later is very different. But overall, would I say I'm happy? Yeah. Would I do things a little bit different? You know, from first when I got here, yeah, possibly.
So tell me about that. Talk to me about what's different.
I think when you do come here, it's easy to get lured into the marketing and the FOMO that people experience about, you know, fear of missing out on a project. And I think, I'm not saying I got completely sucked into that, but there was an element of that where I felt it. And it's a bit different for me now.
So what do you look for now in a property before you make that final decision to invest?
I
I know
think,
you're looking at a lot of properties.
yeah,
What is it you look at now?
I look at location of where it is, whatever project it is, who the developer is. I've had some dealings with a good bunch of developers now, some, you know, high profile ones. But I've realized that when you're trying to choose a property, there's much more to it than just buying. It's just saying, hey, I'm just going to buy an apartment, or I'm just going to buy it. Yeah, I think you have to look at what's around it. You know, your particular flat, what are you going to be looking at? Because your end user is going to be looking at something and picking a unit from, you know, many that might be there. So I think the intricacies I've now developed a bit more.
Can you talk a bit more about that process that you go through in a bit more detail? I know that we've talked about your strategy in the past, and it's not quite sure you have much of a strategy.
Yeah, I know. And that's only because I get the fun out of buying. The selling aspect, I'm sure that I'll get onto that and enjoy that too. But I sort of look at property investments to say, well, you've got to try and do the right amount of due diligence. You can go overboard and overthink everything, but you can go under. But I think, you know, a deal is done at the beginning. It's not at the end. So what do I do now, or who do I and what do I rely on is, you know, a few agents. I only work with a few agents, including yourself. And I'll pick your brains on stuff because obviously you've got a lot of experience here. And there's other people that I also confer with when buying. And I'll also ask what's around it in terms of what else might come up there, good or bad. It might be that a metro station is coming. It might be that, you know, at the moment it looks like it's going to be a park, but it's another building, you know, so that these sort of things, the brochures won't necessarily show you or tell you, and nor will the developer, you know, so that's where you've got to find people that you can trust.
Okay. So is this a daily job for you now, looking at properties?
I wouldn't say I look at this every day, but there are times when there's 3 projects to evaluate. Some days nothing. The helpful thing now is that because I've built good relations with and good rapport with a few, you know, handful of agents, I sort of get early opportunities in terms of, you know, knowing about them. So you've got more time to do more homework behind it, and I think that helps. So yeah, my time goes there. I wouldn't want to say I'm full time, but one could argue it might well be.
Are you getting phone calls? Are you in the data with phone calls now?
Yeah,
They're building up?
because I've built quite a portfolio now, as you know. I'm getting a lot of phone calls.
Yeah. And what are they saying?
Just, you know, we've got a buyer for you. You know, do you want to sell, etc.
Have you sold anything yet?
No.
When's your first sale going to happen, do you think?
Well, the first handover, apart from the place I'm living and a couple of others that I bought that are ready, the first off-plan handover is going to be, I think, in March. I think there's 2 in March. But at that time, we'll sort of decide what to do. You know, I'll follow your lead on at least one of them.
You can follow my lead on both of them if you like.
Yeah.
I'm here if you need me. Okay, so problems, frictions. What have you experienced? Because it's not all plain sailing.
No, it's not. What I'm finding is more administrative rather than anything else. Obviously, there's there's things like construction delays that you hear of on certain projects that you've invested in. All the things they don't tell you in the brochure. I don't think anything to the point where you say, "Oh my God, I'd never have bought there," but you just sort of learn to accept that that it's not all plain sailing. Certain developers don't get things right administratively. Will give you either the wrong information or won't get back to you in time, or are not consistent with how they behave towards you. In other cases, it's the smallest things I might look at to say when the SPA arrives, how do they do it?
What do you mean, how do they do it?
In terms of look at the brochure quality, the SPA paper quality.
Right.
What have they done with this? Have they thought about this? Because if they've thought about to that level to say how they're communicating with me, because don't forget, everything's a potential communication with your client. So I'm looking at things like even the quality of the paper and the folder they're putting it in to give it to me. And I'm judging developers based on that, which a lot of people might say that's a bit mad, but it's the things that they didn't think about, because they're only going to show you all their good things, but that's the sort of things where I've looked at and thought, that's interesting. And, certain developers will ask you to come into their office to pick it up. And the sort of, that approach.
Is that good? Is that good?
It can be, but, I like the convenience. Send it to me, courier it to me, and then courier it back, arrange to courier it back. Because it tells me to say, are you going out of your way to be as convenient to your client or customer as possible? So what I've learned is different developers are very good at different things. It's when some people ask, "Oh, who's a great developer in Dubai?" I don't think there's one. I think there's one for every different aspect. Don't pin me down to just one thing. But for example, there'll be certain developers that are great at marketing. Some are great at admin. Some might be great at the location. Things like that.
What 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give to someone who's fresh to the Dubai market and is looking to buy something here for investment?
I think the one of the first things that I think people should look at is their cash flow, and that's it's often overlooked because you can get drawn into, hey, this is an off plan. You've only got to pay X amount now, and everyone looks and says, yeah, I'm sure I'll be fine. But if you look at typical off plans, they take about 4 years. And a lot happens in people's lives within 4 years. Jobs, money, relations, a lot of things can happen. And I find that people don't necessarily look at investing to say, well, am I pretty confident that I'll be okay to keep paying this? So I think that's the first step I'd advise anyone. Don't take on more than you could potentially chew, or if things go wrong. So allow a buffer for that. The other is try not to get lured in to the marketing, or, you're going to have lots of agents after you trying to sell you what they consider to be the next best thing. So choose a reputable agent, and that might take you asking them very awkward questions, and then go with it. Because Dubai itself, I have no issue with overall. It's a great place to invest. How you do it is where the key is.
What should you look out for when you're trying to select a good agent?
I think you've got to look at experience. You've got to look at knowledge of Dubai, knowledge of how that particular developer behaves. Because if you've been there and done that over a few years, then you would have been involved with their other launches and how they've progressed to completion, handover, etc. I'm not saying new agents are necessarily bad, right? They bring, a fresh approach at times, but, somebody with experience helps because, they know that, either stay away from this particular developer because I've had bad experiences, or go with it, or and if they've got knowledge of areas, I think that's very important too.
So you're dealing with a lot of age, or you have dealt with a lot.
Just a handful.
No, but you've been approached by
loads.
And tell me about the scale or the range in those agents. What do you Because I obviously, I mean, I speak directly to a lot of my clients, but I also hear stories from my clients that, I spoke to this agent and he wasn't really listening to me or whatever it was. What do you find? Are you finding people just phone you up and say, you've got to buy this?
Yeah, they don't ask questions.
Mm.
They're not looking at me. They're looking at themselves. And I've done sales before, you know, and I'm not saying I was great at it, but I was pretty decent. But I learned something that the best salespeople don't talk much. They listen, they ask questions, and they base whatever it is they're trying to sell around the customer rather than their commission check. Other things I sort of test people on. I might ask you to say, Stephen, what do you make of that project? And there's been clear times where you've said, no, I wouldn't bother. Even where I've bought from someone else, where you've said that's a good thing. I think
you bought from someone else when I've said it wasn't a good thing.
And I've also done that too.
Yeah.
Right. And so that said, I think it's important to build good trust with an agent, and look at how they behave. How are they getting to know you and your requirements? Do they actually understand your requirements? Most of them don't, and they don't even understand the project. Most of them. Well, you find that if you ask too many questions, that they do struggle. For anyone coming in, that it might be a studio apartment, might be their only other property apart from where they live now, and might be their first investment. So it's a very important decision for a lot of people. So you're going to spend a lot of money. You'd want to make sure that you're in good hands.
No, I agree. I mean, I think agents quite often forget that this is an awful lot of money you're spending. I've come from the luxury car market, selling Bentleys and Rolls Royces in central London, and some of these apartments cost even more than that. And the way that we treated people choosing a Bentley, we'd spend days and weeks with them to spend that amount of money.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I completely agree.
I have a pet, not a pet peeve, I suppose. It's not a hate or anything, but this is where developers are basically just selling what they have.
Yeah,
and they're not really looking out for you. Is that what you've found?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying in every developer's case, but there are many where I'm saying, okay, I first thought, or at least the thought had occurred to me to say, oh, am I better off just going direct to the developer rather than dealing with an agent? Because maybe I'll get a better deal, or maybe I'll get something special, maybe a discount. Discounts are limited here, as we all know. But I think what you end up, because you don't know what you're getting yourself into, the developer's interest is to sell you anything that perhaps might not be moving first. But only a strong agent would be able to say, no, that's not for you. This is for you. And I think I've learned that now.
Yeah, I think we've all learned that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on the other end of the other side, where I was just agreeing with the developer because I was just interested in commission. That was early days. And then you learn quite quickly that isn't the best way to behave with investors and building relationships. If you were starting again today, what would you change, Minesh, about the way that you've entered this market?
Very difficult question. Because I am a bit of a realist to say you can only deal with what do you know and can do at that time. So at that time when I moved over, I was pretty much a novice in terms of Dubai, not a novice. If it was South London where I'm from, it would have been a different matter. I sort of know my prices, etc., and what to look out for. But in here, I think there's a few where I've bought 1 beds, 2 beds in very densely populated areas, which are popular now. Will they be as popular by the time handover comes? Not to say I'm going to lose money, but then I'd probably have said to I should have said, if I knew then what I know now, it might have been, okay, let's not buy these 3, 4, 1, 2 beds, and let's get a townhouse instead, which might be a bigger lump, but you're more likely to see a better return and not because 1 beds, 2 beds, or studios don't make money, but I think I can't just go by what is that area like today. I have to look. Now I've learned to say, actually, Dubai is evolving and it's moving fast, and it's not necessarily that the place of today won't be great tomorrow, but there'll be other areas or there'll be other requirements from people that are going to come up.
How do you explain that? How Dubai is changing?
Uh,
People who aren't fully aware of how it is, and they're used to their traditional market and their own country.
I think the first thing is people that live here. Okay. What used to be for many, many, many years a transient sort of city where people used to come over, either on a stopover, stay here for a few weeks, or a holiday destination, or even come here, work a few years, and end up going back to their native country. I think this has changed now, and I think it will change even more going forward. Why? Well, why didn't all the other people hang around, those that were here before? Is I think perhaps, say, if you come from the West, you're used to a certain standard of hospital, education, other infrastructure standards that perhaps Dubai was lagging behind in the early days. Because don't forget, this is a brand new place. As a country and as a city, it's relatively new. We're looking at 50 odd years of its even existence. What others in the West have achieved in 200-300 years, they've done here in 50. But if you came here 5-10 years ago, it's a very different space to what it is now. And now you're seeing people live here, move here, with a view to staying longer term. So I think the future of Dubai is more of the same.
Do you see yourself living here for a long time?
I said to myself when I moved here, rather than scaring myself saying it's all permanent, let's try 5 years and see where we are. Now 2 years in, I can't see myself moving anywhere yet.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that, hey, I'm committed for life, but it grows on you more and more. And you get used to certain things. I love the UK, obviously it's where I'm from, but there's, I came to a very sharp realization when I went back recently, just for a few days, to say, you love the UK for what it used to be, not what it is now. And, I think unless I had a time machine and I could go back to that era and go, maybe back to the UK, that's a different story. But we are where we are. And here I feel I'm safe, got good healthcare. There's a vibe, there's an energy to the city that I don't feel back home.
I know that when we first met, you had you had a good property portfolio in the UK. What's that looking like now?
So I've sold half of them.
Okay.
And the other half, I had them up for sale, but then I think in the last 6 months, property prices have just dropped. Interest has, dropped in terms of people viewing them. The first 6, flew out the door. 6 are still waiting. There's a whole handful that I've decided now just to re-rent again. I didn't want to do that, but it's either I take a hit or for now, let's try and buy some time.
Are rents good? Is the returns okay in the UK?
Rent is good, but the costs are higher than ever before.
What do you mean by the costs?
Costs in terms of taxes, service charges, all the other sort of municipality type charges. But a big killer is tax. And even though I'm here, I've still got to pay the tax on rental income back there because they're in the UK. And the only reason I'm renting them is to buy time. And if I keep them empty, I'm going to have to pay all the bills and council tax and everything else. So I'd rather just rent them out. Yeah.
That's a tough thing, though, isn't it? I keep talking to people in the UK who've got property portfolios, and they're complaining about how difficult it is to be a landlord these days.
Yeah, I don't think it's encouraged, which I think doesn't help anybody. And I hope that somebody sees the light to say you need landlords for people to be able to afford renting properties. If you get rid of landlords, there's less properties, which means rents go higher and people suffer.
So I'm getting a lot of conversations at the moment from people even living here or overseas. In fact, one of the ladies in this studio has just asked me, rents are coming down, aren't they? They're going to come down. And I'm, okay, interesting. Correction in the market, prices, etc., and also some kind of recession and an oversupply. How do you, if someone from the UK is
first of all,
that?
the first thing I'd say is that if there's a recession, it will be a global recession. So it's not specific to Dubai or the UAE, okay? Because people talk about Dubai to say, oh my God, prices will drop if there will be a crash in Dubai. Well, no, there will be a crash everywhere. London's a clear example. Prices are down around 28 to 30% today in London. Okay, so is the economy playing a part towards perhaps a bit of a slowdown here? Yeah, I think if it hasn't happened, it will happen. It doesn't take away from how you should be looking at these things is not short term. If you're somebody who's a bit nervous to say, well, should I buy now because prices will come down or they might correct, and then where will I be? I think it's then becomes more important to identify good projects and good units that you can hold on to, and then ask yourself, okay, what's my alternative then? Where was I going to park my money? Let's just say, put it in the bank and get that eroded with inflation. Do you want to put it in the UK? Or an example would be the UK, where prices are clearly going down. And then if prices do go up, and let's say you do make money, you're going to be clobbered with tax. So there's no easy way to look at this except stick to core fundamentals of identifying the right types of investments here. If there's a correction of 5-10%, see it through, but don't buy anything if you're looking for, making money within a year or two, because I don't think that that's the right approach, particularly with property.
Do you think if there was a correction of 5 or 10%, it's going to be across the board?
I think it will affect where there's mass volumes of certain types of units. So if I know this is not the case, but for example, grade A commercial offices, if there was tons and tons of them and not enough people setting up businesses here, we might have a bit of a problem, and it will, resolve itself by way of price correction. But it's the actual opposite here. More people are setting up businesses, not enough good offices. Yes, there's a good selection of 1 beds, 2 beds, 3-bed apartments. And maybe there is quite a lot of them, and maybe more are coming, but we can't forget the fact that people are moving here, and people will continue to move here. My own business partners and their entire families are moving here in March, along with other people that I know. I think it's a great hub, and it will continue to attract people, not just of, high net worths, but other ordinary people.
Why are they coming to Dubai?
They like the fact that it's safe. They like the fact that there's a opportunity here. It's pro-business. They're moving to Dubai because, they don't want their kids to go to schools that they don't like anymore. And here, the standard of schooling is quite good if they've got kids. If they haven't, I think, let's face it, a big attraction is the tax here. Makes it very attractive. And accessibility to, other destinations. So you could move here and get to travel so many locations from here because it's the middle of the world.
So talking about that, so I'm coming to live here and I'm not working like you, really. What do you do all day? How do you keep yourself occupied?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I try and work out. I do a lot of steps, walking my dog along the palm. I cook. I buy properties here and then. And generally meet up with people and friends. But that's, my life is very different to what it was 5 years ago.
And do you think this is a good place to retire?
Do I think it's a good place to retire? Yeah. Why? Because if you're going to retire, you might want to do certain activities. I think there's an abundance of things that you can do here. You'd want, safety plays a big role. If you retire, tax plays a even more important part of that. And the likelihood is you're probably going to spend a lot of time traveling. And I don't think there's anywhere better in the world to travel from.
Yeah, you've got 3 superior airlines on your doorstep practically, haven't you, with Qatar, Etihad and Emirates. So here you are, you're walking the dog, you're meeting up with friends. Do you think there's enough to do? First, I mean, I'm not suggesting you are of retirement age, of course, but I'm trying to build a picture because I do get people thinking, definitely 10 years ago, no one ever thought about retiring here. And now we have retirement visas, which cost $1,000 and you can stay here for 5 years. It's really easy to get one. Obviously, you have to have a certain income to sustain your lifestyle, but medical, people always ask me about medical, how am I going to, what's medical insurance going to cost, etc. Can you talk to that at all?
Yeah, I think medical insurance, obviously if you've got a lot of conditions, then the medical insurance will be more expensive anywhere you go. Okay. But there's also pay-as-you-go options as well, and you may you may get insurance, but it may not cover everything because you've chose to self-pay in certain instances. So I think the options are there. I don't think it's as expensive as people make out. And then furthermore, if you've got some sort of treatment that you want to get done that's non-urgent, you may even say, okay, well, Dubai is close enough to places like India, for example, where the quality of healthcare, is pretty good. There's really good hospitals there, and it might be a fraction of the price of doing it here. But everyday stuff here is pretty good.
I always talk to people about this. It's like when you go to hospital here or doctors, and you say you've got you've got an appointment at 10:30. It happens at 10:30. There's no waiting around, is there?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced that because obviously, as you know, my mother lives with me and she's quite elderly. So taking her to appointments, having been used to waiting around for hours on end back home, especially in the latter years, it wasn't like that before. And here it's, you book the time, you get to see the person you're supposed to. They valet your car even, whereas, back home I'm trying to find Sainsbury's car park for 2 hours, find a space. In that sense, it's here. You've got the very good doctors, very good facilities. Sure, not everyone may give you a great service, but it's anywhere in the world you'd experience that.
I know you call me occasionally or you copy me on emails to developers, etc., about your experiences. How do we fix that?
In what way?
Well, just salespeople and the front end of a developer's office, I think are, in most cases, they're exceptionally good. They are good. Some not so good, but majority are really good. They try and understand what your needs are, etc. Of course, they're pitching whatever it is that their managers told them they need to sell that week. But I think I'm finding, and I'm sure you're finding the same thing, that once the sale is done, it goes to the accountants, it goes to the property managers or whatever it is, whoever it is in the back office. And I think they're failing people there.
Yeah. I mean, without specifically naming a developer, I've had an experience where I've bought 2 properties from the same developer, one almost at completion and one I bought off plan with you. Obviously, I've run businesses, so I look at it through a lens of, if it was my business, how would I do this? When I was getting the second one and the admin done for it, and I went to their office, it is almost as if the company has not invested in building up profiles on customers and understanding what have they bought, who are they, how should we take care of them? Because if we leave a really great taste in their mouth, they might look at other stuff, but didn't do such a great job. For example, they know my name, they've got my records, but yet they'll email me and say, "Dear sir." It's small things like that, and then treat me just like run of the mill.
The problem is that these developers, they're not investing. They're investing in beautiful showrooms. They're investing in brochures, marketing, but they're not investing in their back office.
Usually
they're getting low paid.
Because usually they're run by bad business people. Yeah. Bad business people often prioritize new business over existing. Great business people say, actually, I better look after who I've got. Because if I do that, my front end, the marketing's job becomes a lot easier. I'll sell more. I'll end up saving more money by having to pay out less in commissions, and projects will move faster because I've built a really good reputation with an existing client who's now going to talk to his or her friends and recommend this development because of the experience. If it was me, I'd have a team that sits there, profiles customers, what they've bought, where they've bought. I'd use that team to phone existing customers just to say, how you doing? Just to let you know your project's 6 months in or 6 months away. How you feeling about it? Was there anything that you had questions on? You don't get that.
No.
And you'd say, well, the developer's looking at it, oh, well, that's just an additional cost. But I don't see it that way.
I mean, to be honest, I'm sitting here as a real estate agent, and we don't always get it right by any stretch. But I think that's what we do bring to the table, is that especially if you're an overseas buyer and you've bought remotely, it's very difficult for you to knock on the door of a developer's office and try and sort out a problem. And that's where you need an agent. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And I think that's what people forget when they're buying. The buying is the easy part. It's everything that happens after that, which takes time. And this is something I'm drilling into my agents in my team is don't just sell a property, look after that client all the way through the whole journey. And it's certainly something that House and House, I think, could do, unless it's not need sort of.
No, I know you guys do that.
I think that's, we invest a lot of money. I mean, if you actually look at the amount of people.
Yeah, but if I look at, the ownership of House and House, Luke, Simon, these guys, you can tell they're very customer orientated. They think of, how will this affect my customers? What can we do to make them happier? Either by adding another service or running these breakfast meetings, all these sorts of things they're looking at, but not everyone's going to be like that.
No. It's an interesting statistic, actually, when we talk about House and House. We've got over 500 people in the company now, and only 250 of those are actually customer facing. The rest of them are back office.
Whereas a lot of the other agents would be very lopsided towards sales.
Yeah.
It's the key. It depends. Again, do you want to grow or make a sustainable business or one that makes you a quick buck? It's much easier to look after existing customers.
Do you have any questions for me, Minesh?
It's all well and good you're asking me. Obviously, I've been here 2 years and I'm an investor. I'm a client. But where do you see the next, say, 10 years in Dubai?
I'm not sure I can look at 10 years as far as I think there's a lot of exciting things. If you look at the plans that the government have, the 2040 plan, the 2030 plan, even their 100-year plan, I think it's 2075 or something, is it's extraordinary what they've got to plan. And they're probably, if you look at all those milestones they're trying to hit, they're probably going to be early as well. I think very interesting things like the DIFC expansion. I think that's immense news that's come out recently. And I think to make them, they're setting their stall out. They've learned from their mistakes in the past. And I think the future is looking amazing for things like that. We will be, I know Sheikh Mohammed, the rulers, the government, etc., want Dubai to be probably a major financial center, which I think it is already in the region, but they want to be a world center.
They have a vision for it. They've set themselves expectations. Nobody else is putting it on. They want to do this.
Exactly.
I can see that.
Exactly.
Anything that you think you're worried about with Dubai?
I'm worried for those investors who have been buying these properties where there are thousands of the same units. Where I'm seeing, buildings in Business Bay, in JVC, etc., where there's 3,000 apartments and 2,000 of them are studios, and that scares the life out of me. It really does. I don't know. In a good market, everybody's making money, but we've got to think about the time when the market won't be as good as it is now, and we've got to look at fundamentals. And I think I am very passionate about trying to protect those people from buying into the hype and the FOMO and the brands that are coming here.
Yeah.
I do not believe, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this out loud, that you should be buying a branded property that is not associated with a hospitality brand, quite frankly.
Agree.
I really don't.
Agree.
I think it just makes no sense.
Yeah, I've stayed away from those as well.
So you should. I think everybody should.
Yeah.
There's no value if that brand, should anything happen to that brand, imagine,
Yeah.
we've seen some things happen to brands in the past where they have fell foul of the laws and rules. And then all of a sudden you've got a building with that brand against it, which has got nothing to do with property. I think that's scary.
Not all brands and names lend themselves to other things that they're outside of their scope.
Exactly.
Agree. But unfortunately, a lot of investors can get caught up in the marketing because, let's be honest, the developers are very good at marketing.
Yeah, they are. And I'm sure they're paying mega fees to these brands. So you can't. Money talks, of course. They're buying into these brands, etc. That's one of the things that concerns me. And then I'm okay with brands, but I want a brand to fit that property and that property to fit the brand. So my expectation, I mean, you talk about, I don't know, let's say a fashion brand like Armani.
Mm-hmm.
I think that building really works for Armani. The Armani Hotel, for instance, it really works. It's not a hospitality brand, although they do have Armani hotels. That Armani thing, that really works. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that will always be beautiful. But I think some other buildings, does that building stand up on its own if that car brand no longer existed?
Yeah.
That would be my question.
Yeah. And also, you have to, as much as you're buying into the goodness of that brand that you may be associating with, it takes, for example, if it was a car manufacturer, one major recall or major worldwide issue, then that might affect your apartment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's another way of looking at it.
Exactly.
Whereas I think you're right. I think, fashion, hospitality type of brands lend themselves, provided they are good and that they're overseeing the development, then you're buying value. And I think that you'll retain your value in that.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. But it also goes to the fact that, look, land costs are very high for some developers. So developers are going in, they're buying the land, and they're thinking, right, how can I make the most amount of money out of this land? And what they should be thinking is, how are my investors and my buyers going to enjoy this living experience, this lifestyle? That's what they should be doing. We go back to how developers should be dealing, how salespeople should be dealing with clients, looking at it as much more of a long-term thing rather than a quick buck.
But you look at the ones where they do exactly as you say that they should, those that sell out very quickly.
Yes.
Because they've built a reputation on doing that.
Yeah, but unfortunately, some of these brands also sell out very quickly because they're cheap.
Yeah.
They're small units, they're low-ticket items, and there's a lot of agents out there who are just bumping them out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not now looking at properties to say, hey, I'm just buying a property. I'm taking a step back to say, actually, I'm managing a balance sheet.
It's a great way of looking at it.
And, there are different assets in their different asset classes. And it's the management of that rather than necessarily a whole bunch of properties.
Yeah. I think what'll be interesting with you is when these properties start completing.
Yeah.
And then we'll see. Then we'll see what happens. What decisions you make,
fun and games,
what decisions you make, etc., and how much money you're going to get in rent or for sale, etc.
Yeah.
And that whole process of doing the handover.
Yeah, so it gives me something to do.
It'll definitely be a full-time job for sure. Minesh Pattni, thank you so much for joining me again. I look forward to our next meeting. Hopefully not going to be in a podcast. We'll have a nice dinner or something. But thank you very much for joining me. Really appreciate it.